Hi stamping friends, for this fun fold card we are able to make two cards with the materials. We need to determine which of the cardstock colors will be the coordinating cardstock color. And with the two designer series paper prints that I have here, I'm going to determine that the mossy meadow will be the coordinating color. It's in both of those prints. I am going to use Night of Navy for the card base for this designer series paper and Early Espresso for this one. And we're going to set all of these pieces aside. And while I have the Simply Scoring tool right here, I'm going to score the 8.5 by 5.5 card base at 2 1/8 and at 6 3/8. Then I'm going to move this out of the way and grab my paper trimmer so we can cut all of the pieces to the sizes they need to be. So the designer series paper needs to be 4 by 5 1/4, and it is currently 4 by 6. So I am going to cut this edge at 5 1/4. So we have this piece cut. We need the coordinating cardstock cut to be 5 3/8, and it's the coordinating for both cards. So I'm going to cut the 5 3/8 first before I cut the 4 1/8. So I'm going to set that on the trimmer, cut off just a sliver here, and then this one will be cut at 4 1/8. And then I'm only going to assemble one card, so I'm only going to cut materials for one card. A basic white piece, we need it to be 4 by 5 1/4, and we will need that for both pieces. So I'm going to make the 4 1/4 cut first and then cut it at 4. And this will be cut for the second card. And then your last basic white piece will be for your decorative images. So we will do that after we assemble the card, or assemble the card. So for our card pieces, we have our card base, and these pieces get folded in. So the card meets in the middle. You take your bone folder and crease those. This is going to be the inside piece of the card. This is the coordinating cardstock, and this is going to be our designer series paper is layered over it. There's a couple things you could, or one thing you could do before you cut this out. Because it's only going to be adhered to one panel, if you wanted to punch an image out of here, for example, you could take the dual oval punch, and this is going to punch out the scalped oval and the regular oval at the very same time. So you do need to be aware of that and make sure that you don't put that down too far. Punch that out, and then you can layer this on top of it, and that's going to be adhered to a panel so nobody would see that. So I went ahead and did that. Before I adhere anything to this card base, we are going to have an option to decorate it. You can decorate it by stamping the panel. You could add a coordinating designer series paper, but I'm actually going to take this whole piece, put it in my timber embossing folder, run it through my cut and emboss machine, and then I will have the entire card texturized. When you texturize your cardstock, it actually breaks down the fibers a little bit, so it's not as durable as it was prior to embossing, but that's okay because of all the different things we're going to do to this. So as I mentioned, we got to make sure we adhere this at the right spot. So let me start out by adhering this piece to the coordinating cardstock color. And as I mentioned in previous videos, if I am going too fast, please hit the pause button if you are trying to assemble your projects at the very same time. So I'm going to lay this over, and we have just a 1/16 of an inch border on here. And so this is going to be layered onto the card. But the first thing I want to do is we'd want to stamp our inside sentiment, and before we adhere this, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it. The reason I tell you you'd want to stamp it first is we are going to put this in the inside. It's going to be layered onto this textured cardstock, And if you were to stamp it while it's layered here, you might get some imperfections on your stamped image, and I always need a second chance. If I happen to stamp, it doesn't quite turn out, you can always rotate your cardstock and stamp it again on the other side. So now we have this inside piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere this portion to just this panel of the cardstock, and it's going to adhere just to this panel. So that means I don't want any exposed adhesive here. So I just want, and then I can hide that piece right here. So I'm going to leave it right like this. I'm going to put my adhesive down this piece, and then I'm going to place it right on this edge. Instead of applying a second row over here, I'm kind of blinded by how far over it should be. But by having one strip here, I can turn this over, look for equal spacing on the top, bottom, and side, adhere that, and that is guaranteeing me that I have no exposed adhesive here. I have hidden that piece that I've punched this out of. This card gets assembled, this panel goes down first, and then this panel goes down, and then this is for a decorative piece. But here's a tip that you can do. This is all for our embellishments. We could have a larger image embellished here. I'm just going to have a small sentiment. I'm going to punch out the dual punch. And here what I could do is stamp, and I've already done that, my thank you, and I use Night of Navy. I'm not too happy with using that color. I'd rather use Night of Navy, but I've used up all my Night of Navy in my packet. That's set aside. You can always go to your scrap bin, but a tip you can do is take a sponge and add color to your basic white, and I'm going to bring this piece in that's already done. That way you can add the appropriate color that you want. Put your adhesive behind, oops, that's the unstamped one. This is the one I wanted. Put your adhesive behind that piece, and then I can adhere it here. And I'm okay that it's kind of not a solid image. It has a little bit of some texture there, but I think that adds to the beauty. Now, depending on what your image is, you determine where you want to put your sentiment or your decorative image. And as I mentioned, it can be a much larger piece. I'm just choosing to use a small piece. My tip for you on assembling this, we do need to be cautious that we have no exposed adhesive here. So my tip would be, once you determine where you want to place it, then what I'm going to do is just kind of put my finger where below where I want it, put one dimensional here and one dimensional on the other side here. I haven't taken the backings off, but what that allows me to do is to place this anywhere in this vicinity and over as far as I want without getting any exposed adhesive. So I'm going to take the backings off, and then I'm going to decide I'm just going to place it right here. And this is the fun fold that I've created for this card. And it is a fun fold. As I mentioned, you can put any decorative images. I have chosen to put this dual oval punch on all of them that I have created, and all of them show the beauty of the paper. This one, I like this side of the paper better, so I just rotated this, and I have this adhered to this panel instead of that panel. And here's another sample that I used the Blackberry Beauty Designer Series paper in the mini catalog, and here's a good example of how I changed this orientation up. There was more gold embellishment on this side, so I adhered it to that panel. For this piece out of that 12 by 12, there's less decorative on this, so I adhered it to this panel. So you have lots of versatility, and I hope you enjoyed this fun fold. Happy creating!